Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Vanessa and I'm an indie author from Toronto, Canada, and I publish under the pen name A.N. Sage. I write YA, mostly fantasy, paranormal mystery, but I will be writing in a different genre soon and we will talk about it a bit later when I start actually getting more into it. But if you are new here, then you should know that every week I publish videos on the art of writing, things that have helped me in my journey so far. To date, I've written 15 books and I'm not planning to stop anytime soon. And I've published them all as an indie author. So I've learned quite a bit over the years and I would love to share all my tips, all the tricks, all the mistakes I made with you guys. And I am hoping that you find that helpful. I also share a lot about planners and a lot of different personal journey type of things here and there because I think it's important to kind of have a variety on here. But today we are talking about writing. The one thing that I have learned quite a lot about is writing a series, and not just writing a series, but writing a very long series. My Shadowhouse series currently has 7 books out, and I am publishing the 8th and final book this year. Still aiming for late fall, if not, then kind of like right before Christmas, maybe November-ish, around my birthday type of thing. But I have learned quite a bit from writing, not just Shadowhouse, but other series as well, but mostly from Shadowhouse because it is such a long-running series. And I get a lot of questions from authors who are starting to write a series, what tips I have, how to go about it, what will make your life easier as a writer, as an author, as a creator, when you are writing a series or starting to. So I do have a few tips for you today. I do have a video out already on how to write a series. So what I'm going to do actually with this video today is talk to you more about how to plot a series and how to plan for a series. Because if you are going to be writing a very long series, I think planning, maybe I shouldn't say plotting because not everybody is like a full-on plotter, but planning for it is very, very important. So even if you're not a plotter, if you are going to be writing a series that is like 5 books and up, you should do some sort of planning. Trust me, it will help you. It doesn't have to be huge. I know it sounds overwhelming when somebody says plan like a 10-page book series, but you'll see as we kind of talk about the tips that I have, the stuff you should be planning for. It's more brainstorming, it's fun, it's creative. It's not something that's set in stone. It can always change as you write, but you should have an idea of it and a direction when you're writing each book. So with that said, let's just get right into it. And my first tip for plotting a series is to sit down and think about the overarching journey that your books are going to take. So the same way as if you have one book, you have a journey that your main character or characters are going through. They're kind of starting in point A and they're ending up in a point B, C, or D, whatever the last point is, and they kind of go in between. So you want to think of what that journey will be like for the entire series as well. So your character will start in the before and the ordinary life, the regular life that's about to get upturned. Throughout the first book, that ordinary is going to get turned around. They're going to be jumped and moved forward into a new adventure. They're going to have ups and downs. And then they're going to come out at the end, kind of a mirror of themselves, right? And every single book is going to have that kind of as like the hero journey, if you're following the hero journey or whatever other kind of development of story that you're following. So you're going to have that for one book, each one of these. But your series as a whole, that character is also going through something, right? You have an adventure of some sort. Something's happening. Like in my Shadowhouse books, for example, Billy, the main protagonist, she started out in the first book. It was very plot central, and it was very much related to just Shadowhouse and one singular plot line that was happening there. And I'm not going to do any spoilers if you haven't read it, which if you haven't, it's 99 cents right now. So you should grab it as a series starter. And I do have a free novella as well if you want to get into the series that way. But the plot point for that, and this is in the blurb, so I'm not reading it, but students start turning up dead. She is a witch that is hiding in a high school that is full of witch hunters, and she's hiding who she is. And all the students that are turning up dead, the signs all point to magic. So she's in trouble. And that's kind of the journey she's going to take throughout that book. But as we get more into book 3, book 4, book 5, obviously like that story is going to grow. The stakes are going to get higher. And her full journey throughout the series for Billy is starting out as this person who is hiding who she is from everybody, and then ending up in the mirror version of that. So the mirror version of that would be her being out in the light, being proud of who she is, using her magic abilities in such grander ways, and just being comfortable in her own clothes. This is also a YA book, so coming of age is a huge portion, not just in every book, but also in that overall journey. So think about the big journey that your series is going to take and figure out what that journey is going to look like, more or less. You don't have to have details, just starting point, ending point, and maybe a middle. The same way as if you were planning a book without actually planning. You also want to think about your climax. So figure out what your climax is. So we know for books, the climax is usually kind of towards the end there. It's the big thing that happens. And it's the big kind of right before like the final resolution. It's the big battle, the big whatever, be it physical or emotional or whatever it is. So figure out what your climax is for the series. Not for your books, but for the series. What is going to be that big moment towards the later books in your series? So probably like 1 book, 2 books before the end, even in the final book, right? Figure out what that climax is, and know it, because you're going to be building towards that climax like a hill that your reader will be climbing. You'll be building towards that climax throughout every single book. Each book is going to have more stakes. Each book is going to get more intense for your character, whether physical or emotional or mental, whatever it is, but it's going to grow until you reach that big climax. So you should know more or less what that climax is and where it's sitting in the series, so that you can build towards it properly and get the readers really growing with your series. So getting the stakes higher makes them more excited to read the next book, right? You kind of, this helps me a lot, but sitting down and writing a very short, like a sentence or 2 description of every single book, because then you can play around with it. It also helps if you write down those short descriptions on Post-it notes, put them on the wall, and then you can move them around to see where the books would go in order. Because you might have an idea of how the book should flow, but then when you look at your climax and you look at that overarching journey, you might think, hey, this book that I thought was book number 3 or something, it's actually good for like later down the line. So I'm going to put it right here, right before the end, because it works well with that climax moment. So a short description of every book helps. I change them sometimes. Like with Shadowhearts, I had a short description. After writing the first 2 books, I had to sit down and replan kind of those short descriptions and where the books were going, because I knew that other realms, nothing anymore, but other realms were coming into play. So it'll change, but having that there really helps build momentum as you're writing each book. You also, as you're writing this short description, try to think of the themes that you're going to have for each one of these books. So every book should really have a theme in general. And you can look up themes like online, like just a list of themes for different genres. Check them for your genre to see what the themes are, and figure out with each book what the theme for that book is going to be, what you're going to be dealing with. And that really goes with the description as you kind of start thinking about it. So you want to think about, maybe there is like a call to adventure. Maybe the theme will be your main character growing into themselves, the coming of age, right? You can have darker themes too. So it just depends on what each book is going to have. And it's important to think of the theme for each book, because it, again, helps you figure out where they sit in the spectrum of this entire line of series books that you'll have. And speaking of this whole kind of momentum forward in the series, is you want to think about your overall story arc. And this is very, very important, because just like every book has a story arc where it kind of, depending how you're plotting, planning, how you're writing, but it will start at a certain point, move through the arc, and end somewhere else, right? Or in a circle. if you're plotting it that way. If you do want to take a look at my plotting sheets and what I use to plot, I do give them away for free in my resource library. So all you have to do is sign up for the newsletter and you get access to like a whole bunch of resources that I have in there, and I add to it regularly. So make sure to check it out. I will link a video somewhere up here about when I first launched it and some of the stuff that's in there, including the plotting sheet, so you can get a better idea of them. But if you're working on an arc for your books, you should really be working on an arc for your series as well. So your series is going to follow an arc as well. And that helps the journey, the climax, and just the themes throughout. And then also you want to think about the overall arc of your main character. So your character is going to go through an arc of development in every single book. But you also want to think about how that character is going to develop throughout the series. So whatever the stakes are for the character development in the first book, is going to be that much bigger in the series, right? I like to think of it as in the arc of my character from book to book is not smaller, but it's more immediate. It's an immediate arc. So the change happens on a much faster scale. Whereas the change in the series, when I kind of plot that overall character arc, it's a slow change. It's almost like it's a much more personal, like softer, demure personal growth. So kind of the way that a person would grow as they age, slowly learning from their mistakes and becoming a whole different person at the end. So a mirror version of where they started again, but in a different way. Usually when I plot the overall character arcs in my series, they are not obvious things. They're very small and they're very quiet. And so when you reach the end of the series, you kind of step back and you think, okay, this is not the person I first met, and I didn't even realize that, because that is how slowly that series arc for your character will change. Whereas in one book, for example, it's very obvious that like you're gonna have like a theme stated at the beginning where let's say one of the characters would nonchalantly like tell something to your main character and let them know that, hey, you need to come out of your shell or something. It's so bland in that example, but there's something like that, right? And then towards the end of the book, your character does come out of the shell and they kind of learn that about themselves, whereas at the beginning they were shy and quiet and whatever. That's a very obvious character arc. It's a big character arc. It's very obvious. And it hits you over the head because it happens so fast, right? It doesn't take much for a person to come out of their shell, for example, for somebody to come to terms with the fact, with who they are on one level. So let's say for Billy in the first book, she had to come to terms with that. Her magic, the way that she uses magic and what magic is, what she has been taught, is not necessarily the only truth, right? So there's other ways to be as a witch for her, for others, etc. The overarching arc of Billy in the series is not necessarily something to do with her magic and her accepting her magic, but more so of her growing as a person. She slowly grows as a person, she matures, she becomes an adult, and she becomes responsible for more than just herself. Whereas in the first book, she's very much just worried about herself. And so that growth happens slowly with each and every book, right? So the overall character arc and the overall story arc are very important, two very important arcs to think about when you are plotting your series. You also want to plot your series, and this goes back to everything else that we've just said, as one book, right? It's one long journey, it's one long arc, it's one long character development. So it's kind of like a massive tome. Every single book of yours is a chapter or a section in that big tome. So think of it as one book, and it will be a lot easier for you to think of all this other stuff that I just said. And then you also want to make sure that as you're writing, that you're developing your setting throughout. So just like your character grows, your setting, the environment in which your books are set, they should grow just the same, and they should go slowly, just kind of drip, the slow drip that I talked about in a few other videos. That's what you want to do here. So slowly introduce things about the setting, have it grow, have it expand. Even if your setting is one building for which, I mean, it could happen, but if it's one building, one house or something for an entire 10 book series, there are things in that house that you should not reveal everything in the first book. So your setting should be a mystery still throughout the books, and new things should always pop up. And it will help the world feel more real and more abundant as you're writing. And it will make your life easier as a writer because there's always new things that you can add and grab on and play with. So I think that's pretty much kind of what I have when you're plotting. I am thinking of maybe creating some plotting sheets for a series. I don't usually use plotting sheets for my own personal series. I just do it as brainstorming. I have a plotting notebook, like a bullet journal that I use, and I just brainstorm series plotting there. But I mean, I can. So if that's something you guys will be interested, I can take a lot of these tips and then a lot of other stuff that I've kind of learned, and I can put them all together into a resource as sheets to plot with if you're plotting a series. So let me know if that's something you'll be interested in. Comment below and tell me, and I will go ahead and start working on that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you're writing a series, I'd love to hear about it. Or if you have any other questions about writing a series, feel free to comment below, or feel free to reach out with me to me for on any other social media. I'm more than happy to answer. I love chatting with you guys. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing, being part of the community. And I hope you're staying magical, and I will see you with another video next week. Bye.